I'd like to offer my heartfelt thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to enjoy what I'm sharing with you, to hear what you're going to hear, and to see what you're going to see in today's presentation. I recall when I was 17 years old, I had my first grand mal seizure. Now, for those of you who don't know what a grand mal seizure is, you basically pass out. You fall to the ground or onto whatever's nearest to you. And basically, when you wake up from a seizure, because of the reaction with all of the soft tissue in your body, you just feel like you've been run over by a truck. I've never personally been run over by a truck, but I can recall, I can understand that's probably what it would have felt like. Now, at that time, I had every test known to conventional medicine. All the testing was through, went through all the hours and time and testing, and thankfully the doctor came back to me and said, Glenn, there's no medical reason that you had that seizure. This was probably just a one-time event that will never happen again the rest of your life. So I was like, all right, well, yeah, I could deal with that, right? So probably about 6 months later, I had a second seizure. I was actually playing a little football game with some friends, and I had a seizure in the middle of the football game. So now I went back to the doctor. Again, every test known to conventional medicine as to why I had now the second seizure. And guess what? Same response. The doctor told me there's no medical reason for you to have that seizure. So then the answer was, here, take this pill. And I began taking an anticonvulsant on a regular basis to help control that seizure disorder that we had no known reason for. And I love to golf. Golfing is probably my favorite, just enjoyable hobby, just something to really kind of let loose and just have fun. And I have this buddy that I golf with. His name is JF, and I can think back to the multiple times this has happened where I've gone up to the tee box, I put the tee in the ground, I put the ball on top of the tee. I can hear the birds chirping in the background. I can actually, you can still see the dew on the grass, and you can. And it's the environment that you really want right then, right? So I get up to the ball, take a few practice swings. After my practice swings, I'm set up for the swing. I look at my long distance marker way out there in the distance, and then I have another marker that's just right here, because it's much easier to aim like 10 feet out here. So I get my aim up there. I'm all ready. Get down, I focus. I get the swing back there, and I come through with all my might, and with a crack. And I'm watching the ball. And it starts out a little bit low, and it hits about 150 yards. And once it hits 150 yards, it's like, bam, it just goes up higher. And it races about almost another 100 yards. It hits the ground, bounces the ground, rolls to a stop, probably about 240 yards out there. Really happy with that, right? And everything about it felt awesome. So then my buddy, JF, gets up there. He doesn't use his driver off the tee because he doesn't generally play well with it. So he goes up there with a 5-iron. Does all same scenario as what I went through. Goes up, puts a 5-iron there, takes a couple practice swings. He gets up there and he swings at the ball, and he's doing the same thing. He's watching the ball. It's going right down the middle of the fairway. Again, hits the grass, takes a few rolls a little bit further. And it's literally just a few yards short of mine. Yet he had a 5-iron, and I had a driver. So then I had to think to myself, something's not right here. I hit a beautiful shot with a driver. He hits a beautiful shot with a 5-iron with almost the same distance. But then I thought about this, and I recognized that, well, JF practices. I don't practice. He goes to the driving range. He hits balls. He spends hours there to basically hone his craft. So that's probably why he can hit a 5-iron as far as my driver. And if you think about this, with the way he can hit this driver, he must play a round of golf in maybe the 70s or 80s, right? Which makes me think of the 70s or 80s. Do you remember back in that time? Do you remember when our government told us to stop eating fat? Do y'all remember that? And as a culture, we went no fat or low fat, and think back in that time. You know, the main reason why they actually told us that is as a culture, we were all getting fatter. We were becoming obese. And what our government did is it was really a governmental decision. This wasn't a decision based on a group of nutritionists and dietitians. It was a governmental decision. And what they did, the government got together and like, well, let's look at the facts, right? And the facts were that according to what they were looking at, it's all about calories in and calories out. So if you're going to eat this many calories and you're only going to expend enough energy to burn this many calories, that's why we're getting fatter. So it made complete sense from a cultural perspective. Since fat is the most caloric dense food, tell everybody to stop eating fat. We'll all get skinnier. We'll all be thinner. We'll all fit into our skinny jeans again, right? And so what we did as a culture is we went no fat. And then we started to see things cropping up all over the place, right? There was almost a bagel store in every corner at that time. And even myself, I can remember going to the bagel stores and getting my bagel, that cinnamon raisin bagel that was just freshly toasted. I could still smell the aroma of that today. And of course, I would get some type of a low fat or no fat cream cheese put on there. But I was being healthy because I was following the guidelines that were given to me to eat low fat or no fat. And staying on the thought of health, I can remember years ago, I was actually hired to be part of Dr. Mercola's clinic. And for those of you who may not know who Dr. Mercola is, he's the who's who in the natural health field. He is like the biggest name out there. And I had a friend who knew of Dr. Mercola. And I can remember one of the first things that this friend said to me. His name was Dan. Dan told me, he says, you're working with Dr. Mercola. That's just amazing. He is the healthiest guy that I know. And I asked him, well, why would, I'm just interested, why would you feel that Dr. Mercola is the healthiest guy you know? And I'm expecting something with his thoughts on nutrition or his thoughts on taking care of your body functionally, so many different factors, but it really ended up that he thought that he was the healthiest person because he ran marathons. And Dan felt if you run a marathon, you're really healthy. And he actually even was training to run marathons because of that. And I have a quick story about myself nutritionally. I can remember back in the day when I was first starting to move into what I thought was really a healthy living, is I started to do everything that, again, I was told to do. I was cutting back on red meat, eating a lot of chicken breasts, a lot of light flaky fish. I was eating a lot of vegetables, salads, fruits, whole grains. I was juicing every day. I was doing everything perfect. And I was very excited to be able to make those choices for myself. Now, I have a question for all of you. How many here, by raise of hands, have heard of either the ketogenic or the keto diet? Raise your hands. Right, excellent. So everybody's familiar with this, and you may have heard it as the keto diet, you may have heard it as the ketogenic diet, but just to be completely honest with you, this isn't something new. What we're calling it now is something new. This is something that I've used personally for myself and with clients in my practice, but I used to always refer to it as fat burning. Some people will call it fat for fuel. There's many different ways you can actually verbalize what this is all about. But it's basically training your body to burn fat for fuel. So with this in mind, I got in the car the other day. I actually jumped into my wife's car. And I go in there and put the key in there, put the brake down, press the button, pulling, backing out of the garage, and I pull forward, and the radio's on because she leaves the radio on in the car. And I was about to shut the radio off because I like to listen to educational programs when I'm driving in the car, but it's just about to shut off. I'm leaning over to shut it off, right? And I hear the magic voice saying, we're going to be interviewing Dr. So-and-so from this prestigious clinic who is an expert in the ketogenic diet. Well, I backed off right away. I'm not going to turn this off because this is something I've studied and lived for a long time. I want to hear what this radio station is saying is the leading expert in this, hear what they have to say. So I'm driving in the car, and they get back on, and they're interviewing this expert. And relatively quickly, I was like, this isn't just basically a flippin' joke. This guy is an expert, right? And literally, how many people are listening to a radio show in Los Angeles of a popular radio station? Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, I'm not sure. But basically what this gentleman was saying, and again, remember, he claimed to be an expert in the ketogenic diet. So he explained that you're eating about 85% fat and about 5% carbohydrates, and about 10% of your diet is going to be protein. And he goes on explaining how, well, this is really all about you're eating all this bacon and saturated fat, and then you're adding in a little bit of protein, and then you might eat 4 pieces of bread during the day as your carbohydrates. Now, number one, if you know anything about the ketogenic diet, you know you're never telling anybody to eat bread. And while he has numbers that are relatively accurate, the 85, the 10%, the 5%, it's not that you're eating 85% of your meal is just strictly fat and only 5% is carbohydrate. It's about 85% of your calories are fat. Well, if you think of that, there's approximately 250 to 275 calories in an avocado, as compared to a whole big head of broccoli won't even have near that. It's obviously pretty easy to have significantly more fat calories than it would be carbohydrate calories when you're talking about this bunch of broccoli over here, right? And what this doctor ended up saying is that the ketogenic diet is something that could be good for short-term weight loss, but long-term, if you stay on the ketogenic diet, you're likely going to have heart disease. Now, I was just like, damn it, what did this guy just do? This expert just told 100,000 to maybe millions of people to don't do something that if it's done properly, that would be very healthy for you, and told everybody that you will likely have heart disease. So we have to really be careful with who we listen to and what directions we follow. So with this understanding within the ketogenic diet, again, from a raise of hands, who would like to eat in a way to, how about lose weight without deprivation and really just free yourself from cravings? Would you like that? All right, how about living into a high amount of physical and mental and emotional energy and clarity on a regular daily basis? Would you like that? Excellent. And the ketogenic diet does that and so much more. You see, with the ketogenic diet, you can actually have an anti-inflammatory response. It could be a very strong anti-cancer response. You can change the gut microbiome, which would help with your digestion. You can help increase the muscle mass in your body. You can reduce your appetite. People with blood sugar issues, you can actually help regulate insulin better. I mean, the benefits of the ketogenic diet just really go across the board on all the things that you can actually gain from this when done properly for yourself and really taught by somebody who knows what they're talking about. And if we think about this, how much fun would it be if you could have all of these benefits and eat full-fat whipped cream, put butter on your food, eat avocados, have some bacon, Enjoy cheese, because this is everything that you get with the ketogenic diet when done properly. So, the key, though, is the word, just to really level with you guys, it's the word proper. You see, because we're all individuals. Even the ketogenic diet, as grand as it can be for people, it doesn't really tap into individuality. And we're all different. Hippocrates told us this about 2,600 years ago. One man's food is another man's poison. Not everybody should be a vegan or a vegetarian. Not everybody should be on the Atkins diet. Not everybody should be on the keto diet the way it's initially responded and requested to be and to follow. Because what Hippocrates said 2,600 years ago is just as true today as it was 2,600 years ago, right? And I've read multiple books on this. There's 3 authors that come to my mind right away. There's Dr. George Watson. He wrote a book called Nutrition in Your Mind, tying into nutritional individuality into what's going on mentally and emotionally with your body. There was a Rudolph Wiley. He wrote 2 books called Biobalance and Biobalance 2, tied into blood pH and recognizing that everybody had different diets that were best for them. There was also William Wolcott wrote the Metabolic Typing Diet book. He took the accumulation of all of the research of the last 60 years tied into this and put this all in a conglomeration to really provide you all the information that you really need, the truth about what's right for you specifically. And when we think of different cultures, think of the traditional Eskimo and what they would have eaten at that time, or even to this day, if you're a traditional Eskimo. You eat mostly high-fat proteins that you would generally get from the sea. Quite a bit of whale blubber, whale meat, and seal blubber. Never touch a piece of fruit in your entire life, and very few vegetables, maybe some very rare occasional sea vegetables, right? Yet in the traditional Eskimo culture, think about this. Based on what we know about fat in our culture, wouldn't every Eskimo die of heart disease? Well, here's a little secret for you. In the traditional Eskimo language, there's not even a word for heart disease. Who would have guessed, right? Now you take another culture, the Aborigines. They might eat a high amount of insects, grubs, worms, maybe a little bit of meat from kangaroo or wallaby. Yet these Aborigines had the physical development of Olympic athletes. And the Swiss, high amounts of high-fat cheeses, some meat, rye breads, some wine. And they survived glacial winters based on what they were actually putting into their body. And then the African Maasai, the diet I know that none of you will be envious with today. But the African Maasai, they ate a lot of cow, beef, raw milk from the cows, and actually, it's the part that I know is not going to be a part of your daily meal regimen, but they actually consumed a lot of cattle blood also. Yet the African Maasai had this such a high level of mental and physical development. One of the strongest tribes on this level in all of Africa. So it's the understanding that, yes, the ketogenic diet is very powerful, provides multiple benefits. We talked about the weight loss without deprivation, no cravings, increasing your not only physical energy, but mental and emotional energy and clarity. Great cancer anti-cancer strategy, great anti-inflammatory strategy, all of the benefits that you can receive from this, but it needs to be right for you as well. See, in all of these different benefits that I had mentioned, and these are all exciting, right? To be able to eat your regular daily meal plan and have all of those benefits would be a high level of excitement for you. But that's where it comes into knowing not only how to properly use the ketogenic diet, but also knowing how to make it right for you. All right, so that's where then Depketosis comes in. Depketosis is a very specific way of following the ketogenic diet. Because, you see, when you're following the keto diet, there's some potential problems. And the problems can be, they could be tied into too quick of a toxic release in your body. You might crash between meals. It might lack individuality. Perhaps there's some gallbladder digestive issues that would hold you back. Maybe there's some stress hormone challenges that you have that won't allow you to be successful on the ketogenic diet. Perhaps you'll have an overwhelm with the level of intense focus at how most people teach the ketogenic diet. Yeah, because think about this. Think of how your day would go. If every day you had to check your blood sugar a couple times a day and check your ketone levels a couple times a day. I've been following this for not just a number of years, over a decade. Never once checked my ketones or checked my blood sugar. And you know what? For most people, and perhaps every one of you sitting here today, it doesn't really sound entertaining to be checking blood sugar and ketones through the day, right? Yeah, so that's where Depketosis comes in, because Depketosis takes the best of both of these worlds, the benefits of the ketogenic diet and your own nutritional individuality, and blends them together with the understanding of where there could be problems as well. So with Depketosis, we have you first understand what type of a meal plan is right for you. Now we're going to get that with the ketogenic diet, you're going to be eating more fat than maybe you're used to. But maybe you're the individual who needs a little bit more protein. Or maybe you're the individual who that high of fat may be an issue. Maybe because of your own genetics, or maybe because of functional challenges in your life. Maybe because you have a gallbladder issue, or a stomach disorder, a digestive disorder. So don't you think we want to take all of that into account when we're deciding what you're going to do to create success in your life? And that's what this is really all about, because if you're going to do this, you want to do it right. Because you want the high level of success that you're looking for in your life, and realizing how your nutritional habits can basically turn your life and your health around on every level. Now with Depketosis, of course, you're going to first understand the individuality tied into what's really right for you. Just as Hippocrates said, one man's food is another man's poison. If every one of you in this room today decided to follow the Depketosis meal plan, you wouldn't all be eating 85% of your calories of fat. You wouldn't all be eating 5% of your meals from carbohydrates, and you wouldn't all be eating 10% protein. Because when I look around, I see multiple different genetic differences and variances, right? So why would it be one size fits all, even if keto is a benefit? And with Depketosis, we start you slower, because when you go too fast into ketosis and you start dropping these huge amounts of fats on a regular basis, well, what if that fat happens to be loaded with toxins? How do you think you're going to feel if in 10 days you lose 15 pounds of body fat, but that fat was loaded with mercury and aluminum and arsenic? You're not going to feel that well. So we started slow. We don't want to create too much of a toxic release too quickly. And what about the people who, when you're told to go on the ketogenic diet, and you're told that basically what you need to do is you need to do this intermittent fasting, you're going to eat dinner at 5 o'clock and you're not going to eat until the next morning at maybe 10 or 11 o'clock. Well, what if you happen to be the person who crashes and burns? Does that mean you're just supposed to suffer the rest of the day until you have that first meal? That's ridiculous. Why would we even think that? So that's why you want to work within a program, as I'm saying, the Depketosis program that provides you all the benefits and the understanding of how to make this right for you. Because what most people who teach ketosis will never tell you is that for you to properly fat burn and tap into that stored glycogen, to pull the fat out of your body, to convert that into energy, you need your stress hormone system to be working properly. I don't want to be overly technical, so I'm just going to buzz through this one really quickly. But there's a hormone that's called cortisol that's your primary stress response hormone. So just think of it as your stress response hormone. If that isn't right, you can't tap into that. And then you need snacking ideas to still keep you in fat burning. So what I'd like everybody to do right now is I'd like you to take out your pen and paper that I handed out earlier. And based on the knowledge that you have right now of how you respond to what you eat, I'm going to create a scenario. It's lunchtime. You've got a very, very highly important, comprehensive presentation that you have to give for the next 4 hours. You're not going to have an opportunity again to eat for another 6 hours, and you have to be at your peak level of energy, physically, mentally, and emotionally, for that next 4 hours. So what I want you to do is write down what you're going to eat for that meal, and then we'll discuss that a little bit later. Excellent. Does anybody need a little more time? We're all good? Okay, excellent. Well, now that we can see that most of us would choose something a little bit different to maintain that energy, right? Yeah, so what I'd like to provide for you at this point is an opportunity to ask me questions about what we've discussed so far today. Yes?
Why would you not want to release the toxins quickly?
If you release the toxins quickly, and your body isn't in a position to release them at the same level that you are, or to release them from your body at the same time they're being released from your fat tissue, they could actually basically just recirculate through your body, create a bottleneck effect, not exit your body, be restored, create challenges for about a 24 to 36 hour period, and there's a risk that when you release them from your fat through the lymph into the blood, they can also move into your brain and be very symptomatic.
What if I, by accident, even on that particular plant, release the toxins? I mean, is there any sort of guarantee I'm not going to release them? I mean, I'm concerned about the work rate.
Good, very good question. You're not going to, nobody can say there's an absolute of a guarantee, but a simple thing to understand is that every day you're releasing toxins. It's a part of your natural bodily process. So the key is that if you happen to be somebody who's highly toxic, which in the Depketosis program, we give you a way to assess your body to understand if a high toxic load is likely or not. And then the more likely that you have a toxic load, the slower we would go.
So I did grow up in the days where my parents and everyone, it was just like, I mean, coconut oil equals death. And now people are, you know, tablespoons full of it. And why is that doctor, the expert, still saying that it could lead to heart disease?
Yeah, and that's a great question. It's basically based on old information that we know through research now to not be true. As an example, if you have a heart attack and then you go on the heart healthy diet or eat saturated fats, it's recognized that you'll have less incidence of recurrence of heart attack eating saturated fats rather than the heart healthy diet. Yes, I'd love to take more time for Q&A, but I have to move on today. So if anybody has any questions with this when we're done with the presentation, I'm outside in front. I'm going to be here until every question is asked, so be sure to catch me a little bit later. So, with everything we're talking about, do you remember when I talked about my nutritional habits? How I was doing everything perfect? You know what? It was a flipping disaster for me. I had to eat 6 times a day to try to maintain energy. I was eating so much food. And what I recognized, even though that was the perfect diet based on what mainstream taught us, it was actually the absolute opposite diet was right for me. I needed more protein. I needed more fat. I needed the red meat. I needed the fat. The grains were a disaster for me, and the juicing ended up being a disaster as well. And as far as, you know, with golf, as far as with marathons, remember my friend thought running a marathon was healthy? Again, this goes to show that when we think something is, it always isn't, right? So marathons actually create a significant amount of free radical activity and oxidative stress. They're actually very unhealthy for us. It's a part of our culture, more is better, right? And you think of the no fat in the 70s and 80s. You know, back at that time, there were so many closet Haagen-Dazs eaters, myself included, right? You'd go to the grocery store, I'd buy the deep chocolate Haagen-Dazs with peanut butter, and I would eat it in the car, and I'd throw it out in the garbage can outside so nobody knew I was eating the fat. But I was eating the fat because I had such a deep craving to get the fat back in my diet. And my friend JF, who golfs, remember I was saying he must golf in the 70s or 80s? Actually, JF overall wasn't a very good golfer. And even though every once in a while he would smack that 5-iron almost as far as my driver, that was 1 out of 10 shots. The other shots, sometimes he'd dribble it off the tee, sometimes it would go way right, sometimes it would go way left. And when he was going to the practice golf and going to the driving range, he was practicing something that was incorrect, which is often what we're doing in our health. And as far as the seizures, you guys remember at the beginning when I talked about seizures? So I was put on the medication. And you know what? I still had seizures on anticonvulsants. And there was still nothing medically wrong with me. It seemed so defeating at the time, but really, even though it seemed so defeating at the beginning, it was such a blessing at the end because it started my journey, my own personal health journey, to learn how to overcome the seizure disorder on my own naturally, by addressing what I needed to address for myself as an individual, to escape the seizure disorder, to be living seizure-free and never worrying about having another seizure the rest of my life. Thank you.